Hello, and welcome to our Spotlight webinar, How to Get the Most Out of Your Concept Testing. My name is Sandy McKee. I am the Event Specialist at Survey Gizmo, and I will be your host today. Helping me on chat is Mel Langworthy, Survey Gizmo's Training Specialist. Hi, Mel.
Hi, Sandy. Hi, everyone. This is Mel. I'm a Training Specialist at Survey Gizmo. I'll be helping with the chat. Well, Sandy, take it away.
I'm excited to introduce our guest today, Michaela Mora. Michaela is founder and president of Relevant Insights, a full-service market research firm providing highly customized, action-oriented market research solutions and advanced analytics. Michaela is a 20-year veteran in the market research industry. She founded Relevant Insights in 2007 to provide direct and personalized access to market research expertise at an affordable price. Welcome, Michaela.
Thank you, Sandy.
Michaela, before we get started, I have a poll for our audience. Attendees, if you can answer this question here, have you conducted a concept test? Even if it was a while ago, let us know by clicking yes or no so that we can see how many are familiar with concept testing. It seems to be 50-50. Oh, yeah, 50-50. I'll give it a few more minutes. Okay, looks like the majority have, Michaela. So our audience, most of them are familiar with this concept. Concept testing helps you gain consumer feedback early in the process, hopefully in the development process, to minimize guesswork and maximize business results, ultimately to reduce your business risk. Michaela, you have years of experience in concept testing, and I can't wait to hear your tips.
Okay, thank you so much, Sandy.
I'm going to let you take it from here, so go ahead and share your screen with us.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, concept testing is one of the most common types of marketing research many companies do. Unfortunately, they are perceived as easy to do, and often it is the case that not much thought is put into their design, leading to results that are useless at best or misleading at worst. So in the next 40 minutes or so, I'll be talking about when concept testing is needed, the main challenges we face during the development of a concept description, and different approaches we can use to do concept testing. Let's start with deciding when you need concept testing. In the context of marketing, concepts come in different forms. There are product concepts or services, positioning concepts, advertising, packaging, website, store concepts. Product and positioning concepts are one of the most frequently concepts subject to testing. And when I talk about concept testing today, I'll be referring to issues and approaches related to the testing of product and positioning concepts. I want to make clear that we will be talking about concept testing, not product testing. I'll use the term product to refer to both physical products and services. And the main distinction between product concept and positioning concept is that product concepts are about product core ideas, mostly focused on features, product attributes offered, and they are about the product itself, which can be clothing, can be houses, can be health insurance, software, while positioning concepts focus on the benefit customers believe they will get when they buy the product, which can be feeling special because we get the highest quality, or saving money, or saving time. I want also to make a distinction between product concept testing, positioning concept testing, and advertising copy testing. They are not the same. Copy testing is needed when you already have a winning concept and need to test how to communicate it to the target audience. So you might have learned something new about the audience and want to communicate it with a different perspective, or you want to communicate in a different way. You might have a new tagline, different visuals, or you may want to address a different market segment, and you want to check if the copy that you are using works. So to be clear, copy testing, it's about testing ways to communicate, not finding out what content needs to be communicated. When you're thinking about concept testing, particularly if you are discussing the idea of relaunching a current product or come up with a new one because sales are down, it is important to make sure there are no other business issues affecting current product performance, such as product quality, distribution issues, ineffective media plan, ineffective advertising, or customer service issues, or any other problems that might be specific to your business that might be interfering with sales. So when concept testing is needed, the most common problem related to concepts are lack of relevance. For example, VHS video recorders. Other technologies have made these products obsolete, and it was recently announced in the media that this will be the last year they will be produced. There is no market, there are no spare parts, so nobody's using them anymore. Another reason is when products become a commodity, which often stems from focus on price and less on benefits, which leads to the proliferation of generic brands, me-too products. You may have been too late to the market, so you need a new concept to go against the competition. Another is competing alternatives that offer a better solution to a need. We all know how digital technology has offered better solutions in many fields. For example, mobile deposit, check deposits have led Capital One to close many branches because many people are not going to them anymore, me included. So they are now consolidating branches in new ones, which are remodeled and look a lot like Apple stores. Your product may not be meeting a current need, and this is what T-Mobile found out, paid attention to. They saw that people were dissatisfied with the 2-year contract that has been the norm in mobile services. So they introduced the concept of no contract phone service, becoming the end carrier, which has helped them to grow enormously in the last year. And now you can see the competitors are copying that idea. And finally, you may be ignoring changes in customer behavior also brought by new technology. A typical example of that is the digital cameras versus the film cameras, or digital calendars versus paper calendars. If you find any of these issues with your current product offering and decide to redesign current products or create a new one, you should then run concept testing to make sure that your offer is what the target audience really needs. And in order to develop concepts that really give you the answers you need, you must be aware of some of the challenges we face when creating the concepts that will be tested. At the highest level, when going into concept testing, the first challenge is realizing we are not the audience for the concept to be tested. You need to know your current and potential customers' unmet needs. That seems obvious, but I have seen many concepts created with no base on user research, but on assumptions made by clients' personal experiences or anecdotes. If there is no prior supporting research about the user's need, when the product engineering, marketing, research team get together to define the concept, many assumptions are made based on the personal opinions, preference, and attitudes of the people in the team. And each thinking they know the user's best, when in reality there is a lot of personal projection on the concept. Even when there is research available, the interpretation is often subject to personal opinion. So people in the team need to keep reminding themselves they are not the user or buyer, and if something is unclear, more preliminary research may be needed before finalizing the description of a concept for testing. Knowing the target audience needs will allow you to determine if your concept solves a problem in the market, if it's relevant, if there is a real need that needs to be tackled, and what type of benefit will the concept offer. Will there be emotional or functional benefits? Knowing the audience needs will give you the context that should be included in the concept description as a believable scenario to express why your product is needed. You also need to know how your product is perceived, what type of reactions and feelings, insights, or engaged customers are with it. And finally, you need to know what competing alternatives are available that customers and non-customers you're trying to expand your market may be using or could use if given the opportunity. All this information would allow you to understand the barriers the concept needs to overcome and how strong and believable your offer is. I know this is easier said than done because there are timing and budget considerations that may prevent us from doing more research prior to the concept testing. But when these considerations are brought up, then we need to ask the team, should we invest in a concept test that will give us results that can be useless or misleading because we are testing the wrong thing? So be mindful of the trap of thinking you know your audience without having done proper research, or you will be wasting much more time and money than you would have spent in doing research before launching the concept test.
So, Michaela, I just want to stress that. If you could go back to that slide, because you bring up key factors here. This means that you probably need to do a brand awareness study first or a competitive analysis prior to your concept test. I think that's so important.
It might be part of the research you need to do, yes.
Right. Okay.
Very good. So the second challenge is understanding the difference between features and benefits. I have been in many client meetings where features and benefits are confused and used interchangeably, and often there is an implicit assumption of the benefits when a feature is presented. For example, we have 32 megabytes of RAM in a computer. It's assumed that it makes it fast and that speed is important to the user. However, features and benefits are not the same. Features are part of the product output and answer the question, what does the product offer? For example, it can be materials, size, color, brand, product selection, quality, service, warranties, friendly service, return, policy, price. All of these are product attributes which in themselves don't mean much to consumers unless they produce an outcome and translate into a benefit by answering the question, how does this make my life better? And the answer can go from the practical to the emotional, such as provide me convenience, save me time, save me money, reduces stress, makes me feel happy, allows me to express myself. Underneath all these benefits, the common theme is that how this concept is going to make my life better. And although benefits are often classified in functional and emotional benefits, both types of benefits are usually connected. But why is it important to make this distinction? Because we would be doing a different type of test depending on whether we focus on features or benefits. They have different objectives. If we focus on features, we are doing a product concept test, while if we focus on benefits, we will be doing a positioning concept test. The third challenge is achieving relevance and simplicity in concept description, and this is really, really hard for many teams. In product concept testing, we want to answer the question, what features should the product have to provide the benefits customers want? The answer to this is often used to determine which features should be developed, in what the company should invest. So the concept should include clear descriptions of relevant features to the users. And the key word here is relevant. You can have a lot of features that nobody cares about. Also, you need to present the context in which this product is used and justify why is this product needed. And also be expressed in the language in which the users talk about this product. No marketing, no technical, no corporate jargon. It's about how people talk about it so they can relate to the concept. So say that through research you have been able to determine the features and their corresponding benefits. You may have a list of benefits which may appeal to different segments, and now you want to know how to position your product to reach your target market and make it stand out against the competition with the most important benefit of the list. So it is time for a positioning concept testing. And in positioning concept testing, the most difficult challenge is to simply answer the question, why should I buy this from you, with a position statement that you can test. In the case of positioning concept test, we are trying to figure out which benefit is the most appealing, which then will be used to advertise the product. Again, we're not testing advertising, we're not testing taglines, we're not testing language, we're trying to figure out if people will understand, will get the concept, and will they buy it based on a particular benefit. So you need a clear, defensible, articulated, and emotional satisfying answer package as a positioning statement. So the positioning concept should include a relevant and unique benefit supported by selective features. And important here is relevant and also selective features. Not all the features your product might have. It's just the few that support the claims that you make on a particular benefit. Include the context, reflecting the needs and an emotional state, again, justifying why you need this product. And again, expressed simply in the user's language, no jargon. To do this successfully, you need to do preliminary research that can help prioritize the benefits and identify a common denominator across segments. If you have more than one, if you have not done any preliminary research, you are likely to come up with positioning statements that are crowded with features or benefits without specific focus on anything in particular, which gets easily ignored or forgotten due to information overload or lack of attention or a memory hook. So I encourage you to avoid the kitchen sink approach, since in the concept, if you put all the features and benefits that you have, you probably are appealing to many people. You are giving a little bit of something to many groups, and that might do well in testing. But when it's time for lunch, advertising only can focus on a couple of things. So at that point, the concept may fail because now you're narrowing the benefit to a particular segment in the market, and suddenly you don't understand why it was doing so well in tests, and now we launch it, it's not doing that well. And so your concept may be focused on the wrong features, missing your target completely if you don't do the research. And again, you may have a vague language full of jargon the audience can't relate to. So preliminary research can also reveal issues related to actual product performance and quality in the case of existing products. The concept of features, benefits, and positioning may be appealing and meet a customer need, but the actual product may not be performing as expected. And so instead of spending money on concept testing, it would be best to spend it on improving quality and performance. So let's talk about how to do this. The ideal way of running concept testing is to combine both qualitative and quantitative research. Many companies stop at qualitative because they think it's enough without being aware of the limitations of qualitative research, or they are budget and timing constraints. But what is the goal of qualitative research? Qualitative research by nature is exploratory. You want to understand the range of behaviors, habits, perceptions, what is driving, what is the context in which people use the product. The key word here is range. You're exploring what type of behaviors and needs are out there, say, where my product with certain features and benefits can fit. You don't know yet. You're exploring that. And you're going to capture the user's language, how people talk about your product. It will allow you to formulate hypotheses about what the relevant features and benefits are. It is important. Hypotheses need validation. So this is the stage where you start asking questions about, will that be this feature and this benefit or this one? We don't know yet. But this type of research allows you to figure out what to test in the next step. Please, when possible, do this before quantitative. It will save you time and money in the long run, even if you have to make an upfront investment in qualitative research. The common methods are in-depth interviews, focus groups, online bulletin boards, diary, journal, exercises, in-context observations, and all of these can be done in person, in phone, and online. So please iterate when possible. This is the case where you do a round of qualitative, go back, make changes, do another round. And this process allows you to add information to the concept in a stepwise manner as you make sure the information added previously is clear, so you now understand people get this benefit and this feature, and then we add the next one. So you get real-time feedback and can make quick adjustments, allowing you to optimize the final concept before quantitative research. This is probably the best way you can get the most, of your qualitative research for your money.
We have a question, Michela,
yes.
and it is based on these data collection methods. You don't list social media. Would that be another channel?
You can use different. It depends on the category. So you can collect data from social media too. Again, the type of methods you use, it depends on the category. Where can we find the sample and the type of product? So social media could also use as a data source for context and how people talk about it. Yes.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing that here more at Survey Gizmo. Thank you. Did we have any other questions, Mel? All right. Please continue on, Michela.
Okay. So quantitative research, let's talk about it. Why do I recommend it so highly? Well, qualitative research is descriptive. Quantitative research, if done correctly, can be prescriptive. And the first goal here is to test those hypotheses about the features, the benefits that we formulated during the qualitative phase. We want to know, do these hypotheses hold true? We might have found different things in the qual, but we don't know what the magnitude of those things are. And this applies also to trying to validate the final concept or concepts if you have more than one. What is the magnitude of the appeal and the likelihood to buy this concept, you might find that maybe the majority of people that participated in the qual, they seem to be leaning towards a concept. You still cannot extrapolate that to a general population or a bigger group. Qualitative research by nature doesn't allow you to do that. If you do it, it's not really helping you a lot, because this is the type of data that you need to really make go, no-go decision on product or positioning launch. And so if possible, do this after qualitative research. I know I have seen projects where people jump directly to the qual without doing any qual before, and it's a very risky proposition because we don't know really what is being tested. And so let's talk about the different methods, and there are three main groups. The most widely used research designs for concept testing are, first one is monadic concept tests, and many have probably have done concept tests, have done this. And this is where participants are exposed only to one concept, which often consists of description of either features or benefits, both text and images. You only see one. Then there is the sequential monadic testing, in which you have more than one concept, but the concepts are shown one at a time in a rotating fashion. So I see it in a particular order, the next respondent see it in a different order, but they will be seeing all of the concepts. And lately, more and more, they are being trade-off techniques have been used, and this is the case where several scenarios that are presented and require respondents to compare concepts shown simultaneously and ask them to select the most preferred. So let's talk a little bit about monadic testing, because this is probably the most common test that many use in this area. As I said, we only show one concept to the respondents. If you have more than one concept, then you need to split the sample in cells. If you have two concepts, then you have to split the sample in 2 cells. 5, you have 5 cells. What are the pros of this approach? Well, it's pretty easy to implement. Most product can be tested monadically. It is the best approach to avoid interactions. And by interactions, I mean when you see one concept presented and you don't get anything else, any other information that might contaminate your perception about that concept, and set whatever people have in their mind, which we cannot control, but we are not putting other things around it. We ask them to purely look at that concept. And sometimes it's closer to real life, depending on the category, where we use one product at a time. What is the problem with this method is that it can become really expensive if you have more than one concept, because you need to have a sample size to be able to compare them. And that can become, if you have 5 concepts and you have a sample of, say, 300 to be able to find significant differences between those groups, now you have a sample of 1,500. It might not even be feasible for certain categories because there's a low incidence group. It's very specialized, so it can become tricky. And another issue with this type of test is the metrics that many times are used here are like likelihood, the appeal, the uniqueness, likelihood to buy. They are based on scales. And rating questions are infamous for having a less discriminatory power. And because we know scales mean different things for different people, particularly if you go international studies across cultures, we know they have different meanings. And so you might find, I have seen many concept tests where you end up not finding, any substantive difference because the scales might not be working well for that. For the sequential Go ahead.
I was going to say, can you reiterate what question type are you using there?
Rating questions.
Very good. Okay.
Yeah.
So not the ranking, but rating for each.
Yeah.
Very
Because
good.
when you're seeing one concept, you're asking them many times how likely are you to buy, or how appealing do you find, and there are many different types of scales, but essentially is people are rating the concept on many different
And
metrics.
it's okay to use a table of rating questions rather than each one individually?
What do you mean? Like you have it like in several things on one table?
Yes, related to that one concept.
It doesn't matter because you still are rating. So the issue is not the format, it's more about the type of questions you're asking.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And so in the sequential monadic testing, in which we have more than one, but people see one or the other in a different order, this is a popular approach mainly to save money, because now you have more than one concept and you need less samples. Instead of two, you have two concepts. Now you only with one sample you can test both, and it doesn't require as many people, and it's also easy to implement. The main issue with this type of test is the interaction between the concepts, because now whatever I saw first is going to influence what unconsciously or unconsciously is going to influence my second perception, the perceptions of the second concept that I see. And if you have a very good concept, every time it comes first, the second concept is going to have lower scores than if you have tested that concept in isolation. We probably have higher scores than in this type of approach, because now it's being compared and intentionally with the best concept. And again, this one also has rating questions.
So the order you show them in would be important, correct?
Yes. And usually you try to do that. You rotate to try to avoid the bias order, but when there are really clear winners, you tend to have lower scores for the less the less appealing concepts. Then if you have just tested that one in isolation, you will have a different value there.
Okay.
So lately, there are more and more interested in using trade-off techniques in this field, in the concept testing field, in which you still have multiple concepts shown, but you see them all at the same time in particular scenarios. So you are asked to compare and select one. And the common methods there are pairwise comparisons. You see two concepts. So two are compared at time. Max diff, or maximum difference scale, in which you might have a long list of features or benefits or actual concepts, and from a big list, and then you show 3 or 4 or 5 at a time. You ask them to select the best and the worst, or the most appealing, the least appealing. And then there is conjoint analysis, where different features and benefits are combined in product configurations, to describe a product or a service concept within scenarios, and you see several of these. What are the pros of these techniques? Well, it really allows you to test for a large number of features and benefits in a cost-efficient way, because you have many different features and benefits. You can create many configurations, and if you would have to test those independently, it will require a huge sample to test all possible combinations of them. So this is a way of testing many different versions of a product in a cost-efficient way with just one sample. the other cool thing about this is that you can test your product, your new concept, in the context of your competitor, where you can put it side by side your competitors and see what happens if you do something, and if they do something, what happens to you, what's called share of preference. Because people are forced to make a decision between the concepts, these techniques tend to are more discriminant. So they have a greater discriminatory power, and it's a very intuitive task for the people. They just have to choose, and this is very good for international studies because you have to make sure the description of your features are work well in each culture that you're testing, but the actual task is pretty intuitive in any culture. And this is the best option to test pricing. And you might be asking yourself, well, but there is also, it might be interaction. Yes, it's always in the context. So you're comparing concepts here, but there is an experimental design in the back end, the designs, what is presented to the users that works to avoid that you only see the best option versus the worst option, and so there is one favor always favored than the other. So there is some consideration in the design that allows you to mitigate that issue. The problem with this type of techniques is they can pose a cognitive burden on respondents if too many features and products are shown. Particularly if you have seen those conjoint analysis with a ton of features and benefits, many times you do deeper, they haven't done the qualitative research prior to this to be able to prioritize and see what things we should really be measuring. But this type of analysis, they have a higher level of complexity in the design and in the analysis than compared to simple monadic testing. So if you're going to do this, I would recommend that you use an expert, someone who knows what they're doing. I have been involved in many conjoint analysis for example, in the wine space. And sometimes it's just 3 or 4 attributes we're testing and we're combining. It becomes really complex because there are a lot of prohibitions between them. So you have brands and you have pricing tiers, and certain brands can only show in certain pricing tiers. And it becomes, with just 3 or 4, it becomes really, really complicated. So you need to know what you're doing in this. And due to this complexity, it can be expensive that way. So to summarize how to get the most out of your concept testing, we have talked about make sure the concept is the problem, so you don't have any other business issues masquerading here the problem. And so before you launch that, just make a business analysis, see what the problem is. Determine if you need a product or a positioning concept because they have different objectives, and the content that you put in the concept is different too. Understand the audience needs. Again, remember you're not the audience, so you can have a concept that is on target. And make sure you understand the difference between the features and the benefits for your product, so your message is clear and you understand what drives purchase intent. Create concepts with relevant features and benefits expressed in the user's language. This is really very, very important. And please do qualitative before quantitative tests. So you will save money and time in the long run. Quantitative tests can get very expensive, and you don't want to get to the end and realize that you were not testing the right thing. You wasted all that money, so you have to start all over or just forget about it. Consider iterative qualitative research to optimize the concept. So when you get to the quant piece, you know this is the best concept we can come up with. We have explored all the issues that we needed to, and this is what we need to figure out. Now, is it true? Is this? And we tested the hypothesis with that concept, validated. And finally, use quantitative research to validate findings from the qualitative research and make go, no-go decision. Never make decisions just on qualitative research. Never, ever. And so that was what I had for you today.
Thank you, Michaela. These are very helpful, especially being in marketing. I really appreciate this. I think more than anything, people skip that qualitative phase before they move to the quantitative. They already have their assumptions and hypothesis and jump right to it. And you make a good point. You know, they want to save money, but there are affordable ways to get that qualitative data first to confirm you're on the right track.
I would like to add that the MAC-STIF and the conjoint analysis questions are really thoughtful and informative questions that can provide a lot of data. But one of the cons that you mentioned was that there's that additional cost that's associated with it, either finding a software provider that has those questions or just the extra time that you would be paying a panelist, for example, to complete their response. There's alternatives to that can be maybe not as powerful but can also provide similar information, like a thoughtful checkbox question where they would be selecting features that are the most important to them, maybe including only limits on that where maybe you're showing them 12 options and they can only select 3 or 4, and then using a report like a total unduplicated reach and frequency report would be able to show you the combination of items that would reach the most of your respondents in that test data as an alternative that would be possibly less expensive than that costly MAC-STIF conjoint study.
Right. But you make a good point. You could use that validation, select your top 3 of these. What do you think, Michaela?
No, I was thinking that if you really do homework before the conjoint, you can really make it very efficient and doesn't have to have a lot of information and burden the respondent. Because again, you want to present things in a context, particularly if you're interested in sometimes you use conjoint for, say, product line optimization, and you are not considering the competitive landscape, but sometimes you want to see what's happening with you. And the good thing about the conjoint and the MAC-STIF is you get simulators at the end where you can play with different scenarios and say, well, if we change the price to this level, or we add this feature or that benefit, what happens to the share of preference? What happened to the competitors? Where are we getting? Where are we stealing from share, or where are we losing share to? So it depends on the objectives of the study, and the complexity usually can be narrowed down if you do your homework first.
Absolutely. A little bit of preparation can go a long way to make sure that analysis phase is a lot easier.
Right. Well, you guys, we do have a question, and it is talking about the difference between MAC-STIF and conjoint. I don't think everybody in our audience is familiar with both those terms. So how would you describe when to use MAC-STIF versus conjoint? Michaela?
Yes. So MAC-STIF is like the poor cousin of conjoint, and it can be done pretty quickly. Essentially, what you get out of MAC-STIF is a ranking of things that might be most preferred, most important. What you do is you have a list of, say, features, and when you select through an experimental design, you show 3 to 5 at a time, and you ask people, tell me which one is the most preferred or the least preferred. And you go through several screens to that. So they're still making a trade-off, but it's narrow to that set of features, and there is no combination of things. It's just the independent. And what at the end you get a ranked list of, okay, these are the items in the order of preference. The good thing with MAC-STIF is it gives you the magnitude of the preference, which you cannot do with the scale rating. You cannot say if someone selects a 5 and then someone selects say a 4 or a 2, you cannot say it's twice as much. What you can say that in MAC-STIF. In the conjoint analysis, what you do is that you combine different, you let things move around and make different configurations of products. So say you're trying to sell houses, and so you wanted to figure out what type of house would be most appealing to a particular segment. What type of features should the house have to appeal when you create those model houses to select which models should we go after. And so you start combining different things from the house, the number of rooms, the number of bathrooms, the pricing. So all those that are key, you figure out those are key variables during the qual, and so you come to this part of the project, and you start combining them, and you present them in front of them. So now you see, it could be with images and it could be with text. You see a full house description side by side. You might see 3 houses, and then you choose one. The next screen, you may see a different combinations of houses, and you choose another one. And in the back end, what we do is we run a model, statistical model, that estimates the probabilities that people would choose particular combinations. And so it allows you to have, particularly for pricing, where you can do a lot of variations around pricing, because in MaxDiff, you cannot do that. If you want to test something with pricing, you just put the concept with the price, and that's it. But in Conjoint allows you to iterate different, we call it their attributes and levels. So each attribute has several levels. So if you have price would be an attribute. So you have a price, a level that would be, okay, the current price, and then you have 50% more, 20% more, or 50% less, 20% less, and then you start making variations around it to see what price point combined with other, because also, again, it's part of the context. Now you're trying to ask people, okay, look at this product in total and tell me what would be. And some things will be more important to people than others, but that's why you need to do the homework first, to just present things that are relevant and not omit, because also as a case in Conjoint, if you omit important variables that people consider when they're making a purchase for a particular category, then your results will be totally biased, because you're missing a big piece of what people are really thinking. So to avoid that, then you should do your qualitative research. I don't know if I answered the question.
Very good. We have documentation in our help section too that gives images of the MaxDiff and the conjoint analysis for those who want to know, and you can see how they report as well, how the question's set up and how they report. So please look at those examples. We've got some good ones there. And I think that's all we have. I don't see any further questions. We'll stay on the line for a few minutes. If anybody does want to ask a question yet, please do. Michaela, thank you so much. This has been really informative. I just find it fascinating. Of course, I am a market researcher. So thank you for your tips